Dallas draws even in game 2 with a 7-3 win, and we head back to the Xcel Energy Center tied at 1-1. We'll break down everything that happened in game 2 on today's Locked On Wild postcast.
You are Locked On Wild postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, your team every day.
Minnesota Wild fall 7-3 in Game 2 against the Dallas Stars, and tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is underway. Seth Topal joined by Kevin Gorg. Kevin, it seemed like everything that went right in Game 1 for the Wild just was not there in this one for the Wild. We didn't expect that Dallas was going to come out and try to make a statement in this one after losing in Game 1, and just all in all kind of a frustrating one for the Wild here tonight.
Yeah, I really felt strongly that winning Game 1 the way that the Wild did, there was so much pressure on Dallas that the one thing I really wanted to see tonight is make Dallas earn it. Put some pressure on them, keep the game tight, make sure in the third period that you're right there breathing down their neck, and you come out and your top power play unit coughs up a shorthanded goal, which sets the tone for the entire night. You get down 4-1. Things have gone pear-shaped. But to the Wild's credit, you come back and score 2 goals within 11 seconds. And now here you are late in the second period, 4-3, and you could feel the pressure ratchet up in that building. You could see it on Jake Ottinger's face. I was in that end of the rink. I was in that corner, kind of rolled his eyes when he skated to the corner to try to shake it off. And I'm like, this is exactly what the Wild need. Now is your chance to play really tight hockey and force them to earn it. And by the time the Stars got to the intermission, it was 6-3. And at that point, the game was in a real bad spot. So Minnesota made a ton of mistakes. Dallas's go-to player stepped up. And Dean Evison hit the nail on the head saying, we played great in Game 1. We didn't play great in Game 2. We need to bounce back in Game 3. And like he said, you're leaving Dallas 1-1. Dallas now has to win a game in St. Paul at some point to win the series. And you did play tonight without your top 2 centers. No Hartman, no Eck. They both are a possibility for Friday. No one's making excuses, but that's a huge loss, especially when you look at how well Dallas did on their power play.
Well, and I think that reinforces, too, if people wonder what a guy like Ryan Hartman brings to the lineup. Not only did he score the OT winner, but he battled through those lower body injuries and is a guy that just brings a ton to this team. And so his absence is felt when he's not there.
Yeah, and he was out in morning skate today to try it out, and we were all watching from the stands right behind the Wild bench, and he was giving it his best effort at, doing a couple line rushes, shooting on the goalies, and he just didn't look right. And at that point, you kind of figured, unless something dramatically changed before puck drop, that they'd probably take the high road. And the silver lining is Joel Eriksson Ek skated once again, looked fantastic. And I guess we'll have to wait and see when they get back to Minnesota tomorrow. We're flying back at the lunch hour, and I'm sure that the Joel Eriksson Ek will be chomping at the bit to get out for morning skate on Friday. That will be the tell. If he's out there and they take line rushes and he's involved, then I think he'll be a go. And I think both guys have a chance to play. But I think the next 24 to 36 hours will dictate both their health and their opportunity to play.
Kevin, I had mentioned just to a couple of other listeners that it's frustrating to see some of those penalties, but at the same time, you don't really mind seeing guys like Kirill Kaprizov kind of stand up for himself at the end of the game, considering what he's dealing with during these first 2 games. And so try to eliminate some of the penalties that are self-inflicted, but hey, if you got to stand your ground and stand up for yourself, that's another story.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I think the referees did a really nice job at the end of the game trying to diffuse some of the bad blood with those 10-minute misconducts. If that kind of scuffle happens any other point in the game when it's competitive, it's probably 2 minutes on each side. And I think for Kaprizov, getting him off the ice at that point was probably the best thing for everybody involved. He clearly is getting frustrated, and I think rightfully so. I mean, they're taking their shots, but I think when push comes to shove, he's shown throughout his time with Minnesota that some of this stuff motivates him, and he'll look to try to go out there and hurt him it counts the most on the scoreboard, and he'll make plays. And you've got a Minnesota team that left the rink extremely frustrated. And even though the series is 1-1, there's a tone to this series that I think plays into the hands of the Minnesota Wild. They have been a team that's been at their very best when they're physical, frustrated, and able to go out there and play on that edge. And I think you're going to see exactly that in front of the home faithful on Friday night.
And you see some of the comments that Matt Zuccarello made after the game, and that they go back to the X, tied 1-1, and Dallas now is going to get the Wild's best shot after Dallas gave it out in Game 2. The Wild are going to have a chance to respond on their home ice, and I think that is one of the encouraging parts of this series, is that we have seen them do that when situations present themselves.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at this pragmatically and look at how these teams match up. I mean, it on paper certainly looks like it's going to go the distance, 6 or 7 games at the very least. And so at some point you're going to have a night like this. And I think when you play playoff hockey, when you win, you feel like you're never going to lose again. When you lose, you feel like you're never going to win again. I think the fans kind of feel the same way. Everything gets magnified. The beauty of this whole thing is it's now a 5-game series, and the Wild have the home ice. They have 3 of the last 5 games in St. Paul, and they have been one of the best teams in the league on home ice, and specifically in the second half of the season. Dean Evason gets his matchups. We saw Peter DeBoer, who's a fantastic coach for Dallas, get the matchups that he wanted tonight and force Merrill and Faber to be out there against some of his top weapons and take away the Spurgeons and the Brodins from those matchups. Now Dean Evason gets his chance to dictate matchups, and maybe Dean Evason gets 1 or 2 of his top centers back in the lineup. So it's a tug of war. You got to stay to the task, and Minnesota has to get back to who they are. And you're not going to outscore this hockey team, Seth. You're not going to win games 6-5 and 5-4. Tonight's game was dictated by Dallas in every way, shape, and form. And Minnesota has to get it back to what we saw in game number 1, where Dallas didn't score a goal 5-on-5. That's the kind of game we need from Minnesota on Friday. Tighten it up defensively, get better physically, don't take dumb penalties, and let your star players carry the load. That's the recipe for success. That's the challenge ahead.
Wild head back to the Xcel Energy Center, tied at 1 game apiece after the Stars even the series with a 7-3 win in Game 2. We've got plenty more to discuss. We'll talk Gustav Nyquist, who again had a really solid game for the Wild here in this one, and plenty more to break down as we continue to discuss Game 2 of the first round of the NHL playoffs on today's episode of Locked On Wild. But first, a word from our sponsor, which for tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Continuing tonight's Locked On Wild postcast, the Dallas Stars draw even in the series after winning Game 2 7-3. Seth Topal joined by Kevin Gorg. Kevin, another solid game for Gustav Nyquist. Had a couple of just really nifty feeds to set up goals for the Wild, and a guy that it seems like is getting better as he gets more acclimated to this team and as the games pile up.
Yeah, what a find by Billy Guerin. And this was a creative find because if you recall, he was hurt when Minnesota grabbed him at the trade deadline, and it was a roll of the dice for sure. But what you had is a player that had great hands, great puck skills, great playoff experience, and has fit in really, really well. And now you're seeing some of that play out as he's back to full health. He's making an impact. Every shift he makes a little play on the wall. He's so hard to get the puck from once he has it, and then he knows how to distribute the puck. Some of the assists he's putting out there. The one to Freddy Gaudreau tonight was just brilliant. He had a couple helpers. He's been very impactful. And, you look at what Minnesota brings to the table right now in terms of depth and some of the weapons they have in the bottom six that can hurt you. And he's certainly at the top of that list. And now you can use him on the second power play unit, help the depth of that area. Very, very impressed with Nyquist. And just talking to him, Seth, he has a quiet confidence about his abilities. And in these high-pressure games, he's been there and done that. He's gone on cup runs. And so I think he's a really good influence on some of those younger players that are on this roster. You think of Matt Boldy, think of Brock Faber. These guys are kind of learning on the go, and they're surrounded by the Ryan Reeves, the Gustav Nyquist, the Oskar Sundqvist, these guys that have gone on cup runs. That certainly can make a difference as this series progresses, and you get more poker chips on that table when you get into game 5, game 6, maybe a game 7. That's when it really starts to pay dividends, and the ripple effect, aside from the great play on the ice, is there.
Kevin, we saw the Dallas power play once again cash in on some of their opportunities. And so you look at the what the penalty kill for the Wild needs to do. It's either tighten up or simply be used less. And so for the Wild, I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B can help them in that regard. But it's interesting to look at how Dallas approaches the penalty kill as well, really trying to confuse things and prevent the Wild from getting into the zone. So maybe you draw a little bit from that as well.
There's going to have to be adjustments, and both these coaches are going to be put to the test. And I think for Minnesota, it'd be great to stay disciplined and think that you're going to take less penalties. I just don't see that happening with the bad blood. So now you have to adjust on how you defend. Start from the faceoff circle. You're losing a lot of faceoffs, and then on one of the power play goals tonight, late in the hockey game, they had 2 different chances to clear the puck and didn't do it. And that was their Achilles heel last year. We haven't seen a lot of that. That's been a major improvement on their penalty kill this year. That's why their numbers throughout the season have gone up in that category. And they had one of the hottest penalty kills down the stretch in the regular season. They've gotten away from that. Certainly part of that is the personnel issues. You don't have your top 2 centers who are 2 of your top 4 penalty killers on this roster. They're likely going to be back at some point in the series, maybe as soon as Friday night. And then you need a big save. And I thought the most backbreaking goal in the hockey game was the power play goal scored by Jamie Benn. And I love Marc-Andre Fleury, and I think the Wild hung him out to dry in numerous situations tonight, but that is a puck that he needs to stop, and he didn't. And that happens, and you move on. But you don't blame your penalty kill when Jamie Benn is 50 feet outside the net in the circle, rifling a wrist shot to your goalie. That isn't on the penalty kill. That's a shot that any goalie will tell you they'll take in that situation. It just didn't work out tonight, but there were other breakdowns. There were other mistakes made. And Minnesota has got to tighten things up when Dallas gets on the power play because they legitimately have a top 5 power play in the NHL. They've got weapons all over the ice, and you cannot afford to let those weapons burn you.
And that's a great point as to why things got to where they got to what we saw against Dallas here tonight is because if you have a couple of those goals coupled with not up to standards play in front of the goalie, things go south in a hurry.
Especially against this team. Dallas, to me, is a team that's built to win at this time of year. They can beat you so many different ways. They can beat you down low. They can beat you with net front presence, and they can beat you with snipers. They've got guys that can shoot the puck. And so if you turn the puck over, if you take penalties, you're going to put into the hands of the Dallas Stars. They are a high-flying operation. That's why I was so impressed with Minnesota in game 1. They have the template right now. They have it right in their lap. They played almost 5 full periods of hockey. And Seth, they didn't give up a power play goal. They gave up 2 goofy penalty kill goals off the faceoff where I talked to Gustafsson after the game. He flat out told me he whiffed them both. So they both were pucks he thought he could have stopped in his sleep. So that's the template. That's the recipe for success. And Minnesota knows they can do that. And now they know when they get away from that style, how dangerous this Dallas team is. And I think you're going to see a completely different team without the puck on Friday night. Right back to the basics, right back to discipline. They'll have a film session. They'll have a conversation. And this is a hockey team that all season long has had some bounce back to them in big spots. And I think you're going to see that happen again in 2 nights.
And we'll be able to see it in front of a packed house at the Xcel Energy Center, which the X is usually full on any regular season game, and you ratchet that up during the postseason. my first opportunity to see postseason hockey in person. And so that's just going to be a fantastic time. I can't wait, because if there's one arena amongst all of them that's going to have it cranked up to 11, it's going to be the X.
It's a Friday night, Seth. It's an 8:50 puck drop. And I'm going to tell you, people in Minnesota on Fridays, they usually punch out of work around 4 o'clock. So you've got a gap there of almost 5 hours where folks can get their tailgate on, head down to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub and all those great spots in that area around the rink, get the beers flowing, have some fun, be loud. I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to get after Ryan Suter. He used to be a member of this Minnesota Wild team. He is public enemy number one. They're going to get after him. They're going to get after Jamie Benn. They're going to get after Ottinger. As much as we love our little Minnesota connection in that net, it is going to be rocking on Friday night. And I know the Wild, they're going to feed right off that crowd and come out full of fire.
Can't wait. The Wild head back to the X with the series tied 1-1 after the Stars win Game 2. That will do it for tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. And as I mentioned, getting a chance to go to the X for Games 3 and 4, we'll have live Locked On Wild postcasts for you after both games. So make sure to tune in for that, listeners, as we guide you through the rest of the series. Also, make sure to follow Locked On Wild and subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes as we guide you through the rest of this series as much as is possible. You can find new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.